So really we have issues upstream, midstream, and downstream in the life cycle. So with raw material suppliers, manufacturers, wholesalers and distributors, and really at the very, very end with the consumer, things that they're seeing. So it's a very diverse market, and it's constantly changing, and there's new challenges all the time. So it's much more interesting and exciting than most people would think about the food and beverage industry.
Welcome to Agbioscience, the #1 podcast in the world for innovation in food, animal health, plant science, ag tech, and agriculture. Welcome back to Agbioscience. I'm Kayla Chittister, producer of the podcast and today's host of the show. The intersection of innovation and regulatory, specifically when it comes to food as health, is a growing conversation. Today, we talk with Dave Riggs, Business Cluster President for Eurofins SFA, to learn more about how their laboratory works, the conversations they're having with food brands across the globe, and how he sees food as health emerging as a topic to be told. Please enjoy this conversation with Dave Riggs on Agbioscience. Dave, thanks so much for joining us on Agbioscience.
Thank you so much, Kayla.
Yeah, we're having this discussion in what I think is a critical time in the food industry. So I'm really excited you're here. Before we dive deep into the weeds, let's start at a high level. Tell me a bit about the work you're leading at Eurofins, specifically the SFA business unit, and who you aim to serve.
Sure. So our focus is on customers in the food, beverage, ingredients, dietary supplements, in some cases pharmaceutical industries. But this also includes companion animals, which would be pets, and livestock. So basically anything that a human being or a companion animal or a livestock animal puts in their mouth, we will support testing, inspection, and certification for. So it's a very large, broad, rapidly growing market sector.
Food companies across the board have a lot to think about, Dave, from product development all the way to meeting regulatory requirements. What kind of risks usually come up across a product's life cycle, and what can happen if quality and safety standards aren't fully met?
Right. So early in product design, we have to focus on things like specifications, and we want to make sure that we don't have pathogens present, so microbiological agents or other pathogens that can maybe cause like an allergy. Things like heavy metals, phthalates, items that are listed on the California Prop 65 or REACH guidelines, and there's thousands of compounds that are present. So early on in product design, when we're developing foods and beverages, we have to look at those specifications, and we have to look at the supply chains. And of course, many supply chains were greatly disrupted with the COVID pandemic, and still necessarily haven't restored because prices have changed, suppliers that used to be present aren't anymore, regulations change. Once products are actually up and running, then it becomes oftentimes more of a manufacturing issue. Did things change in the production line? Was there staff turnover? Was there relocation? And then finally in the post-production phase, late in the life cycle, oftentimes things happen where, we can't use this brand of metal-lined epoxy can, and we have to go to an aluminum can, and we have to go to maybe a biodegradable substance. So then packaging issues or issues in the supply chain where the product is doing great and we're shipping it locally or regionally. Now the brand takes off and everyone in Europe and everyone in Asia wants the product. Well, products behave differently when you put them on the slow boat to China and they see high temperatures or freezing temperatures. And so there can be downstream and post-production issues. So really we have issues upstream, midstream, and downstream in the life cycle. So with raw material suppliers, manufacturers, wholesalers and distributors, and really at the very, very end with the consumer, things that they're seeing. So it's a very diverse market, and it's constantly changing, and there's new challenges all the time. So it's much more interesting and exciting than most people would think about the food and beverage industry.
How does your team approach that, Dave? Is it from a sort of a consultant's point of view when you are talking with customers and going through these challenges? How does the Eurofins team approach these challenges?
Yeah, so really it's a 3-question approach. Number 1, ask. Number 2, listen. And number 3 is solve the problem. So we're going to ask a lot of questions. And sometimes it can be a little annoying for the clients, but by asking a lot of questions, we can really get the backstory on what the challenge is. And oftentimes it's not what it just appears to be. On the surface, it may be we're seeing black specks in a beverage, for instance. But the reality is there's more to it. By asking questions, we'll determine, you changed the packaging, you changed raw material suppliers, you changed packaging lines. We're using a different bottling company. And by asking a lot of questions and really being curious about that, we can really get to the contributing factors and the root cause of the problem. Once we ask and we listen to what the customer is really up against, then we can solve. And by solving, that's going to be, okay, what is the testing approach? What is the analytical approach? Do we need physical testing, thermography, spectral testing, chromatographic testing, microscopy, and we have, over $10 million of state-of-the-art equipment. I've got, brilliant, wicked smart scientists who've, pretty much, they haven't seen everything, but they've seen a lot. And so, our track record of success is north of 95%, even on non-routine challenging things. But it's a mix of chemistry, more traditional physical sciences, analysis. And a lot of it's just good, forensic question asking, the scientific method, document the information, peer review it, and then try to have an orthogonal solution where we have multiple data points that confirm and, that we really got to the root cause of the problem and solved the problem. And that's been a recipe for success that's resulted in double-digit growth for our clients, really for the last 10 years.
We've entered this new era that I'm sure you guys have maybe seen some movement in, Dave, with the food as health and nutrition movement. Major brands beginning to make public announcements on ingredient shifts in foods we've known and purchased in stores for years. Has this trend made its way to your laboratories yet? And are there trends that have come alongside this as an unintended consequence of the food as health movement?
Absolutely. So we've seen a lot of things, there's the Make America Healthy again, but really this has been a global movement for years where people want, ingredients on labels that they actually can read and understand they're natural. They don't want synthetic materials. Europe for 20 plus years, California for 15 plus years has been trying to get rid of toxic or threatening ingredients, and that's just escalated in recent years. So absolutely, and so we're seeing where people are wanting to source maybe more naturally, less synthetically derived ingredients, but also, there's a lot of challenges with inflation and economic pressure. Do more with less. Use sustainable sources where we're not, using slave labor or, making terrible decisions that are destroying the health and the safety and the sustainability of the planet. So we want green solutions. We want sustainable energy. We want biodegradable, plastic and cardboard packaging. We want to reduce our CO2 footprint. And again, there's always new pathogens out there. It used to be there was the big 6 allergens, then the big 9, big 8, then the big 9. So there's constantly evolving regulatory pressure at both the U.S. federal, but really at an international level that we need to navigate. Another example is things like aquaculture, hydroponics. People want sustainable farming techniques. You hear all the time about stories about tilapia that's, farm raised versus, free range out in the oceans. Chickens, free range chicken, grass raised beef where the cows actually are, running around outside. They're not housed in, a 3x6 pen. So sustainability and really having that green fingerprint or footprint is very, very important. And we've had to teach, no pun intended, we've had to teach a lot of the old dogs new tricks. And the thing that's interesting is Indiana, and really southern Indiana, Indianapolis, is really at the heart of the ag bio growth movement. Some of the research and innovation that that Indianapolis ag bio sector has is just, most people don't think that animal feed and livestock is very exciting and interesting. It's huge. It's really making a huge difference. We're coming up with cheaper products, more sustainable products, faster times to market, and Indianapolis and southern Indiana is at the core. So I'm really excited about this.
I always like when you give Indiana its flowers. So thank you, Dave. Much of this conversation starts with the consumer, and you've kind of said that, and then it feeds into this evolving regulatory landscape. How do you balance this innovation and scientific discovery with that rapidly evolving regulatory landscape? And does it change the way you consult brands and approach your work?
I'm going to say yes and no. The basic science, the basic approach that we do to ask customers questions, to listen to their challenges, and then come up with a scientific solution. That may be, a pathogen test for microbiology, or let's do heavy metal testing to make sure we don't have too much, lead or mercury, cadmium, arsenic. Or it may be a more sophisticated solution where we have to look and say, okay, what are the levels of monensin in milk, or the levels of monensin in cattle? Or what is the level of an API in a poultry feed? Those things change, but the basic science that we're going to use to approach it, the portfolio of tests that we have, does not. So it's ask the right questions and get the right answers, and then put together really a customized solution. So the way to look at it is we're not building an assembly line of vehicles. We're more like a custom chopper shop where, okay, it's a different headlight, different set of handlebars, a different engine, different trim and stuff, to put something together that checks all the boxes that the customer really requires. But again, what we do for, say, a poultry or livestock production solution might be very different than a food safety issue for cats and dogs that are looking for something that's a alternative to flea and tick control. But we use kind of the same instruments, the same chemists, the same scientists. There's a portfolio. We have about 400,000 tests at Eurofins. I don't claim to know how to use every one of them, but we've got a bunch of really smart scientists that kind of have access to the recipes. They're kind of like recipe cards. And I always tell folks, if you can read, you can be a pretty good cook. And in our case, our recipes are all of our 400,000 methods, all of our protocols, and we have databases for literally every test, project, study, investigation that we've done, and we can quickly access that database. So I won't go so far as to say it's AI, but we're maybe smarter than the average bear.
I like it. We're going to look ahead to challenges, opportunities, and what's next after the break. Agbioscience is supported by Indiana Farm Bureau.
From berries to dairies, from crop advisors to data analyzers, Indiana Farm Bureau is at the forefront of the top issues impacting Indiana agriculture. No matter your role in the ag industry, Indiana Farm Bureau membership means you'll always have a champion and an advisor. And because so much of your time is focused on your own enterprise, it's also good to know Indiana Farm Bureau is always working to fight for the future of agriculture. We come together to advocate for rural viability, the protection of property rights, competitive tax policies, and against burdensome regulations. Whether our members need a door opened, an impact in public policy, or an ally to strengthen their communities, Indiana Farm Bureau is there. We are the unified voice for all agriculture. To learn more about the benefits of Indiana Farm Bureau membership, go to infb.org.
Welcome back to Agbioscience, talking with Dave Riggs from Eurofins. Dave, what do food companies need to be mindful of in the future that your team at Eurofins is already preparing for today? What challenges or headwinds do you see on the horizon for the industry?
Yeah, obviously there's always changing food safety compliance and where interventions are needed. And so as new regulations, whether it's for Making America Healthy Again, California Prop 65, REACH, there's guidance in, over 150 countries. Japan, Australia oftentimes are leaders and innovators on where things need to go. So that's one area we have to focus on. There's a lot of new analytical methods that have been launched, especially for pathogens. So like LAMP technology, 3M happens to have a platform. People probably have heard about issues with like salmonella and coronabacter. And so we've had to develop whole genome sequencing and light amplification methods like the 3M LAMP system to rapidly identify salmonella and coronabacter strains to ensure that we are not, allowing little babies and infant formula clients to be exposed to pathogens that could pose a health risk. There's all kinds of new things with animal feed technology. It used to be we just, dumped the type A article and mixed it in at the feed mill to make a type B and a type C. A lot of new products are being brought to the market that have greater efficacy, fewer side effects, longer shelf lives, and have more sustainable. So a lot of issues with sanitary, design principles, especially in the meat and poultry processing equipment. Your hazard analysis and control plans, HACCP. Eurofins does a lot of assurance and training with our new college graduates and people coming into the field because the United States is beginning to export more livestock. China loves their pork, beef and poultry. These are growing. There's a need, and the United States has the land. They have the grain, the corn, the wheat, and the oats, to where we have the ability to really feed the world. And so we're encouraged by a lot of the growth trends that will bode well for the animal health sector, both with companion animals, your pets, your cats, your dogs, horses, things of that nature, but also for your traditional livestock, beef, pork, poultry especially.
Do those challenges create opportunities for innovation and creativity across the value chain?
Yes, absolutely. Everyone's looking to gain an edge, whether that's a raw material supplier or a processor or a wholesaler or retailer. Everyone's wanting to do more with less. And so if, from a scientific standpoint, if the Eurofins, chemists and scientists, if they can, maybe build a better mousetrap and, there's millions and millions of heads of cattle or, pigs or poultry, when there's an avian flu outbreak and, tens of millions of, chickens have to be euthanized, that has an impact on egg prices and egg availability. And so we've been able to work with rapid pathogen testing, for instance, to more quickly identify contributors to avian, pathogens. And, what's the next thing? Is it going to be mad cow or hoof and mouth? So there's a lot of those global challenges that are out there. So, the scientists at Eurofins, we're always trying to stay one step ahead of things. We're very active with, AVCO, Pet Food Forum, Supply Side West, International Poultry and Processing Expo. We're doing a webinar actually next week on the Innovative Feed Act, which, for about 100 years, feed hadn't changed very much. But really in the last couple of years, pretty groundbreaking changes have become available. And I would encourage anyone just, Google IPPE or Innovative Feed Act. And, we've got a great webinar. I can share that at a later date if you guys want to share on a follow-up. A lot of great information. I think that your AgriNovus group would be very interested to maybe see some snippets or at least a copy of the slide deck from that webinar that's coming up next week.
Yeah, absolutely. You're an engineer by trade, Dave,
Yeah.
and you've had a chance to host college students for one of our tours, one of our Field Atlas Company tour cohorts at your Indianapolis facility earlier this spring, actually. And so I have to ask this question. What advice would you give to students considering their career path, but don't have a lot of working knowledge about ag bioscience?
Yeah. I would encourage them to, connect on, listen to podcasts like this. If you're not on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn. Put in topics you're of interest. Like if you're interested in chemistry testing or chromatography or spectroscopy or, physical analysis, microbiology, if you put those keywords in, you can search and connect with people on LinkedIn. Most of the folks who went there, they connected with me. No, I don't have a job for you tomorrow at Eurofins, but by connecting with me, I typically mentor 7 to 10 young people any given time. I kind of have a recipe. Typically the first 30 minutes, it's kind of getting to know the candidate and what their interests and passions. Then number 2, we delve into some skills. Is it more listening skills? Is it are they more interested in sales? Are they interested in technology? Are they interested, and then finally, we kind of come up with an action plan to, get that interview to, maybe it's getting an internship, or maybe it's, let's read a book or two or watch a podcast or two. So, every person is different, but I'm a teacher at heart. My mother and father were both physicists. My dad proposed to my mom in a physics lab. So, yeah, I'm a science nerd. Hey, I own it. I'm proud of it. But teaching and mentoring is always at my core. And, I'm 62 years young, but so when these, 19, 20, 21-year-olds are coming in, maybe they're junior, senior year, and they're the best and brightest, it's so uplifting just to see, because their eyes are full of promise. They're so smart. They know so much about technology and AI and just all the tools out there. And the future, at least in the Midwest and Indiana, is bright. There's so many smart chemists, scientists, microbiologists, analytical chemists coming up. And really, they just need to be matched with industry partners, the Eli Lillys, the Elenkos, the Roches, the Hoover Farmers, those are the big companies, the big players, Merck, Zoetis. There's 20 or so big companies, most of them are based in the Midwest, who are producing livestock feeds, things for the, pet food and companion industry, which is rapidly growing because everyone during COVID went out and bought a puppy or a cat. And as those animals age and have additional offspring, there's more and more pets out there that require, whether it's medical devices or drugs or some type of treatment to keep the animals, healthy and long living. So I think the future is really bright. And again, I just encourage kids to be curious. Go online, ask questions. Hey, Google and Chat GPT really work, but connect with people, have a conversation. I'm a little concerned that a lot of folks think they can get through life by never picking up the phone. There is a phone app on there. Don't just rely on, chats and blogs. Connect with people and also talk to people who are maybe a generation older than you. I was traveling in Europe, and there's a granddaughter, and she's riding on the train across England, and she's talking to Gran, who's grandma. Grandma's got all these racy stories about how she, fell in love 50 years ago and, did some kind of outlandish things. And it's like, life is better on the train when you talk to older people because, believe it or not, they have interesting stories. And so I love talking to people a generation older than me. They have great life experiences. And even though technology obviously advances and, according to Moore's law, doubles, in terms of productivity every 3 years, a lot of basic principles like, be kind, listen, follow the science, double check your data, use a peer review in a scientifically defensible process. Those things have not changed for hundreds of years. Be a good human being, support your fellow neighbor, avoid getting into, political or religious arguments. There's plenty of forces in the world wanting to be divisive. I've found that 80 to 90% of human beings, they don't really identify with liberal or conservative, Democrat, Republican. They want the world to be a better place. They want to make products and, people safer and hopefully enjoy peace and prosperity. So I think we have a great opportunity to do that with the young people. And I'm really excited to mentor and coach and try to be a resource for folks. But if there's one thing if I say advice, connect on LinkedIn. It's a great tool, not necessarily Facebook.
It's a fantastic one. Thank you for that. As you look ahead, Dave, what has you most fired up for your team? What is on the horizon for Eurofins?
Yeah, there's some really neat things out there people won't get excited about, but there's some new products for aquaculture, things like fluorphenicol, very safe, sustainable, breaks down, biodegradable for sustainable farming for wild caught salmon. So they're actually in pens, but the salmon are able to swim around the ocean and enjoy a good life as opposed to being raised in captive in a pen or in an aquarium. A lot of really exciting things with methane reducing additives. So, Elanco and people heard about DSM and Bovaer, but we're really at the forefront at Eurofins with new products that can reduce the amount of methane generated by cows and sheep. And just as a data point, there's more methane produced by the sheep in New Zealand than every volcano and every car in Australia and New Zealand. So, jokingly, sheep farts are no joke, and they contribute to a lot of methane. So products that have come out like 3NOP. There's other methane reducing bromoforms that really are algae and bio-based. That's really exciting. Old products like monensin and rumensin, which, these things have been around since the 50s, but they're making a comeback where we're able to formulate these and put them into pets and cats and dogs, where now we can maybe make dog kibbles that the animals can eat as opposed to maybe putting drops on an animal for flea and, tick control and things like that. So that would be a new medical device and application. So old products, but new packaging and new delivery systems are really allowing us to come up with really innovative solutions to make greener, safer, more sustainable, in many cases, healthier and lower price food products that are out there. So I'm really excited about the innovation that's going on, and I encourage everyone to, go online and Google things like, sustainable food supply, sustainable beef, poultry, or pork, and find out what's going on, because a lot of those things are going on in Indiana and in the Midwest.
It's innovation across the entire value chain. Fascinating. Dave, thank you so much for joining us on Agbioscience.
All right. Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Yeah. And thank you for tuning in on behalf of the entire AgriNovus team. Thank you for listening and watching. See you back here next week on the podcast.
Agbioscience is a podcast by AgriNovus Indiana, brought to you by Indiana Farm Bureau. Produced by Kayla Chittister and Fabian Rodriguez. Photography and design by Kaylee Verstay. Video by Darren Cooper and 1898 Creative. If you like today's episode, subscribe, rate, listen, and review. Get all episodes of Agbioscience online at agrinovusindiana.com.